Hello everyone. Today we are going to create a tutorial to help photographers get a photograph that is shot on a white background to a silhouette white. So this series of photographs was photographed in one of my classes, and it was shot on a piece of white acrylic plexiglass with a white background. We need to get this background to be a bright white with no areas of smudges or marks. We need to adjust the color and to straighten out the boxes so that they are square. Another issue that I see here is that this happens to be for a package design class, and sometimes when they create their packages, there's little bowing at the bottom edges or at the top edges, and when the package is kind of floating up from the top, it definitely needs to be addressed as well. So to start with, I imported these images as DNGs, as you can see here, and if you look at the library module, you'll see that I made my selections from each exposure that I want to choose as my finals. When I first import a series of photographs, if they are all the same, I might create a collection. So I'll do that now. I'll do Command A, and I will create one collection, and I will call it Project 2. And the next thing I did was I went through each one of the images and I made my picks. One of them has to be at 5.6. Here you can see that this is F22. This pick is the 5.6 version of that. And then I chose from here, this is the F22, and this is the 5.6 version of this composition. So you need to have two compositions, two F5.6s and two F22s. So after I put my picks on the ones that I think I want to work on by clicking P over the thumbnail to add this little flag, I can then filter down here using the filter bar, clicking on this flag to choose only the images that I have picks on so that I can isolate them from the rest of the images in that import. So now I'm going to Command A, and I'm going to create a second collection. I'm going to call this one Project 2 Finals. This way I can easily find the whole series of images from Project 2, and I can find the images that I want to work on. I also chose a color card so I can easily match the white balance to the rest of the images. So to start with, I'm just going to click on my Greytag Macbeth card. I'm going to click on the letter W, and that will take me right into the develop module, and I will grab the, well, it will put me into the develop module, and it will activate the white balance tool. In here I'm looking for the gray square that's close to 50. This one is 35, this one is 64, this one is 50 or 51, but closest to 50. I'm going to click on it, and that sets the white balance for this image. Since I have all of these selected, I can go ahead and sync that. If I only had this one selected when I made that white balance choice, I would just Command A, and then over here click Sync, check None, and then check that white balance is on and click Synchronize. So now at least all of these images have the same white balance. So I'm going to choose just one of these to start to work on. Um, I will choose this F22 one since it's in focus. Yeah, I'll try this one. I like the exposure a little bit better than the other one. So I'll make all my changes on this image and then I will sync them to this image. And if you notice, by clicking N, you can kind of compare them, and Shift Tab will give you some real estate to look at them. So these are my two choices, and I can clearly see that this exposure is a little bit darker than this one. So I'm going to make all of my changes on this one, and then I will sync it to this image, but then I will probably have to make one more adjustment in the exposure before I would export this image. So I'm going to X this one so that this is my final choice. I'm going to Shift Tab to bring back my panels, and I'm going to start to work on this. So the first thing I notice is that these edges aren't straight. So before I do any other finite processing, I'd like to address the I'd like to visit the lens corrections panel, and all I really would do in here is click it open, switch it to basic, check all three of these options on, and click auto. And it just straightened out the image a little bit and took away a little bit of the distortion. So here you can see without it and with it. It's a very subtle change. Oh no, that's the effects panel. Let's try using the backslash. There we go. If you choose the backslash, there's the before and there's the after. So as you can see, we made a nice white balance adjustment and a nice lens correction transformation. Okay, so now we're going to continue to work on this. I would probably go right up to the basic panel and adjust the exposure a little bit. By my histogram, it shows me, if I click on this little white triangle, are there any areas that I'm burning out, meaning pushing the whites too far to the right. I'll show you what I mean by if I pump up the exposure a little bit. You can see if I click on this triangle, it shows me the areas that are blowing out to bright white where there would be no information on the paper. In our case, it's not an issue. I'm pretty comfortable with this exposure. Maybe it's a little bit light, so I'll take it down just a hair. I think this is good. The creator of these packages, when I was with them, they said that these colors needed a little bit of a boost. So I'm going to go down here to the clarity, and I'm going to pump up the vibrance a little bit. And this kind of helped to get the pink areas and maybe some of these bluer areas to pop out a little bit. Let's take a look. That's before, that's after. So it's starting to come to life a little bit. Let's see, I feel like the blue could probably use a little more pump, so I might go down to my hue saturation layer and just click on the saturation and pick up this tat, and maybe I'll crank this up a little just to see what will happen. And not a whole lot happened, but let's take a look. Backslash. Okay, I see a little bit more blue popping up. Maybe I'll just pull this one up just a little bit too. There we go. So now we got that blue to pop a little bit more. And all I did was be inside the saturation and use my tat. My tat is still active. I'm going to put my tat back by clicking there. So now it's not active anymore. And we can see the changes here by clicking here just to see the changes of the saturation. And I think that is a pretty nice change. My artist may disagree with me, but we'll have to talk about that and make an adjustment if she does disagree with me. Okay, so now that I'm pretty satisfied with the color, I'm going to click I to get rid of this information up here so that we can see our desktop a little bit better. And I'm going to go over here to the basic panel, and see if there's anything else I need to do. I'm going to try, you see how there's like this gray area, and I really want to try to get rid of this gray area and kind of make it white. I'm going to see if I adjust the highlights, if that will work. So it seems to work a little bit to brighten up the background, but I'm not really getting rid of this. I'm going to tap into my tone curve quickly, see if the lights go up. Now when I click the lights, it's kind of making everything a little bit lighter, so I'm going to double tap on this just to bring it back, and I'm going to tap on this to make that go away because it's distracting to me. I'm going to try one other method of trying to get rid of this gray area and pushing it to white, and this is called our graduated filter tool. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to push the exposure up, and I'm going to crank up the highlights, and I'm going to pull this out. Now see how it's going away, and I can even push into the package a little bit, and it's not really affecting the package because most of my change was done in the highlights. I'm going to push that exposure back up because it did happen. So what you do when you work with this is first you do something, then you pull out your gradient, and then if you don't like what you did, you can always back off. So if I took the exposure way too high, see how it's pushing into the package? I can always bring it back down so that I can just change the area that I want. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. It looks good. That would be harder to do over here, but really quickly the adjustments are sticky, so I can just do the same exact thing by grabbing another one and pulling it over on this side to, let me see if I can get this one just to back off a little bit. There we go. So we made the outsides a little bit brighter. We still have to address in here, but it'll be easier to make a nice selection with the wand tool once we get into Photoshop. When you're finished using your graduated tool, you want to tap on it to close it and get back to the normal panel. And really quickly, I'm going to go over here to the spot retouching tool. I'm going to choose a nice large brush. I'm using my right bracket right now, and I'm just going to tap here and let it do its magic. And I'm also going to tap here and let it do its magic. And we can zoom in. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to collapse that. I'm going to zoom in 1:1, make sure that it's actually in focus. It's loading. There it is. And I'm just going to scroll around the screen and take a look and see what we have as far as spots. So you see that's that lifting I was talking about in the beginning. And she might want to adjust this corner. Let's see if there's anything else. The top looks good. Okay, so there's very little actual retouching. So I'm going to back out, spacebar, or I'm going to click up here to fit. And I think I'm pretty good with this. I think that we've done all that we could do. I'm going to check the basic panel. I think we've done all that we can do in Lightroom at this point. So when you're finished with everything that you can possibly do in Lightroom, and I think that we are, I'm just tapping that to close out of the spot healing tool. All you have to do is click Command E to export this image into Photoshop. So it says, let's see. I'm checking my Photoshop to see if it loaded, and there it is. So I had Photoshop open earlier, and I have some things in strange places, so I'm going to do Window, Workspace, Reset Photography. So this is kind of what your desktop should look like at this point. And I'm going to take out my tool panel so that when I wiggle around my screen I can still get to my tools. And I think I'm going to take out my layers panel so you guys can look at my layers and see everything. And I'm going to click Control to, I'm trying to get my, thumbnails to be larger, and things aren't working just perfectly yet. Let me start getting some layers, and I think that that command will work. Okay, so dang it. Let me backtrack a little bit. Sorry. I'm going to close this file. This is so typical of me. I'm going to close this file. I'm going to go back in. We didn't do anything, so nothing happened. I'm going to go back into my Lightroom. I'm going to click on my crop, and the final dimensions of this image needs to be 8 by 10 or 10 by 8. So I'm going to choose this option, 4 by 5, 8 by 10, to get it to the proper size before I export it. And now I'm going to export it. And you can see just by cropping it that we got rid of our spot. But you know what? Upon doing this tutorial, I'm going to escape from the crop, and I'm going to reset the crop back to where it was, and I am going to export it the way it was, because although I want your images at 8 by 10, you may not want your images at 8 by 10. So I'm going to export it just the way it is, just the way I had it before. And yes, I'm going to edit with a copy of the Lightroom adjustments because I like what we've done so far. I just want to move forward. So I backtracked, and then I rethought my backtrack. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. Right now I'm in Pro Photo Color Space, and this is the way that I normally process files because I'm a photographer, but you should be working in Adobe RGB, and I'm going to Shift Command I or File, Image, I got to do Shift Command I don't know what it is. It's File Info, and it says that I have a 14 by 9 at 240, and your images need to be at 300 ppi, and if you uncheck resample image and switch it to 300, then you'll have a better sizing. You'll have a better print resolution. Click OK. Alright, so let's get to work. We have to first, I noticed that even if, let me get rid of some of this stuff. I poked out, now I got to get rid of it. Oh, you know what? Window, Workspace, Reset Photography. Okay, and I'll pull this back out. I'll collapse Lightroom back there. So first I just want to pull out some rulers. If you don't have some rulers out here, you can do Command R to get your rulers to pop up. And in any tool, most likely, but if it's not showing an arrow when it hovers over the sides, you can click the Move tool and you would definitely get these guidelines. So now I'm just pulling out a few guidelines to see what I have here. So Lightroom did a good job of fixing the perspective, but unfortunately these boxes weren't perfect to begin with, and they might have been on a slant when she photographed them, and there's a certain amount of lens distortion that's just naturally there that we might have to adjust. So I'm just pulling out some grid lines to see that both of these boxes are beautifully straight, and they are clearly not. So the first thing I'm going to do is I know it's not the first thing, it's one of the things. But please note that I am not a movie maker and I don't have a script, so I'm kind of winging it. Anyway, I'm going to choose my marquee tool, M, and I'm just going to choose a nice selection around this box. I'm going to move in a little bit so I can see, and I'm going to do Command J, which will jump this selection to its own layer, and Control. There we go, Control, and I can get large thumbnails so that you guys can see those better. I was trying to do that before, but I guess unless it had more than one layer, I couldn't activate the larger thumbnails. So anyway, on this layer here, I'm going to do Command T, and I'm going to, inside the transform box, I'm going to Control to get the pop-up menu, and I'm going to choose Distort. And I'm going to see if I drag this corner, can I get that box to straight? There we go. See, I'm working on the bottom corner. And now I'm going to try this top corner. That's good. I'm going to move up and I'm going to do Command minus so I can see all sides. I'm going to pull this one out a little bit. And I'm going to pull this one out a little bit. So I'm trying to make my box as perfectly square as possible. And I'm going to click Control and I'm going to switch to Skew and I'm going to move it to the right ever so slightly. There we go. And then I'm going to click Return. And I'm going to do Command H to hide the lines. And I'm going to turn it on and off to show you what it was before, what it was after. So although it felt like we were doing a lot of distorting, it's very important that your box is actually square on the paper. And now that I'm looking again, I see that this corner isn't playing nice. So I'm going to do Command T again. And this time I'm going to go right to Skew, Control, Skew, and I'm going to move it down a little bit. See if that helped. I'm going to check the top. That looks okay, and I'm going to skew a little bit to the right. Let's see how that looks now. I think this looks much better. Return and Command H. And I'm just going to pull out one line and just kind of see if I got it. And I think that I did. Yay me. Hand, double click. Okay, so once I get that one going perfect, I will then Command E to combine those layers, because I'm not trying to make layers and complicate things. I'm just trying to make things straight right now. And then I'm going to go ahead to the second one and choose a marquee, a nice selection around this box. And I'm going to do the same thing, Command H to bring back those lines. And this one's not as bad. I'm going to do Command T, Control, pick up Skew again. I'm going to move this bottom over a little bit. And I think this is a little bit of a perspective issue, so I'm going to click Control and I'm going to pull out these lines. And I do have to do a distort because it's only this one corner. So I'll click Control, Distort, and I'm bringing out that one corner there. And I think that makes this box a little more square. I'm going to click Return, Command H, and I'm going to look at my work. And let's look at the results from before. So the problem here is that this box is kind of flying up in the air. So you got to be really careful to make sure that your product is actually on a line. Sorry. And it is. So it might look like it's riding up a little bit, but it's not, because it is actually on a line. And this bottom part, which is distracting, we're going to address that in a little bit. Okay, so we have two nice straight boxes. I forgot to Command J and jump it and do my work there, but we had so much extra white space around it, it didn't really matter. So we still have just the background layer. We have these beautifully straight four-cornered boxes, and we can do Command H and Command D to deselect anything. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to address the fact that these are flying up in the air. So we need to get our boxes on their own layers. And I think that the best tool to work with is always the pen tool. Oops. Z. So if I grab my pen tool, but you could use the lasso tool or the wand tool. But let me just tell you why we're not using the wand tool. If we use the wand tool, yes, it will pick up the background, but then we got to play around in here and figure out, is this part of it, and it starts bleeding in here. So I'm not going to choose the wand tool. You could use the polygonal lasso, and that might do a nice job. But it doesn't allow you to make any changes if you make any mistakes in the end. So this looks good, but you know what? If you really look at it closely, you're going to be missing something. So Command D, and I'm going to go get my handy dandy pen tool. I'm going to choose start here and go right over to the edge here. And if I make a mistake, I can Command click and move that point. Coming over here, Command Z, Option to change my direction. I'm just going to round that corner a little bit because it does have a little bit of a round edge. Command. I'm going to go right up to the top here. Little top edge here. Maybe we don't want that top edge, so I'm going to Command Z, and I'm just going to bring it right across. And we're going to clip that top part. I don't think she wants to see that anyway. And I'm going to go down here, and I have a perfect square. You can go to your path, and you can click here to make it a selection. You can refine your edge, and you can put a few settings on it to smooth it. So this says smooth feather, contrast shift edge -100. Is that normal setting? Yeah. These settings look pretty good to me. The edges look good, but not too sharp, and it's on black right now. You can change them in here to see, you know, you can see it on the layers or you can see it on transparency, but I like to look at it on black because it's really showing the contrast for me, and we already had it on white, so I think this looks like a good selection. So I'm going to click, make sure remember settings is on, so when I do it to the other box it will have these same settings on it, and I will choose output to a new layer with a layer mask and click OK. So now I have my first box on top of this other box here. I'm going to back out, and maybe I would name this left. And I'm going to turn this one back on. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other one on the right. When I choose the right side box, I'm going to make sure I'm back on my background layer. I'm going to move over, and I'm going to choose here, and I'm going to go right, like I'm going to do this here because she doesn't want this bowing here. I'm sure she doesn't. Oops. I meant to do Command plus and I did Command delete, so that's what that was. But I just Command Z'd out of it. So I'm going to lose that, and then I'm going to come over here, go down to the bottom, and oops, Command Z, and make sure I meet my edge. Okay. And in the background layer, I'm going to click the refine edge. Oops, I didn't make it a selection. So you knew this way of making a path a selection, or you could click Control and you got to be in your pen tool, Escape. Oop, let me tap out. P. Alright, just do it this way. Now let me show you what I was talking about. Command click, get that active, and then you can click Control, and then you can do Make Selection. And then you could have done it this way. I'm going to cancel out of that because I want my settings exactly the same way. So I am going to make my selection via the Paths panel. And I'm going to click a marquee and refine edge toolbox, and those other settings are sticky, so I can just click OK, and now I'll have my right box, R-I-G-H-T. Alright, so I am going to, let's see what I want to do now. I'm going to go to the top box here, and I'm just going to choose the Move tool, V, and I am going to just move it down. And you see when I'm using my arrows, I'm using my arrows to move it down. And you see what it's doing? It's taking away that bowing feeling. You see that? So now it looks like it's perfectly landed. Maybe we need to go just a little bit higher. There we go. So you can see it a little bit, but it does give it a little bit of separation, so we'll leave it like that. But then it starts creeping out the top. So in the bottom layer, you might just want to do a marquee and then edit fill with white and click OK. So now you can see just the box that is on the bottom, the corrected bottom, with not the extra space at the top. And I'm going to do the same thing with the right box. I'm going to move it down so that it covers up that bowing and looks more like a straight box. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just come up here and do Command Delete, which is filling with white. Command D. And the last thing that I want to notice is now we still have this layer underneath here, and it's got the bowing edge underneath. So if you look here, we have our two beautiful straight boxes, but I want to keep this layer active and useful. I want to use the reflection here, but I don't want to have that bowing behind there. So the next thing that we'll do is adjust our background. I'm going to choose the I'm just going to choose the adjustment layer of a curve. I'm going to choose the white eyedropper, and now I'm looking for the darkest white area that I can find. I'm going to pull up my info window, info, and I'm pulling this up because I want to bounce around the image and I want to look for the numbers up here to say 255. If I can see 255 all in these numbers, see they were at 250 even though it was looking white. Some of these here, the 255 there, see if you look, it was 249, now it's 255. I'm looking right up here. I can't point at the same time. 255, 255, are we 255 in here? Up, see, look, we have some 250s, 251s. I'm going to click here then to make it even wider. And so what I'm doing is I'm clicking on the darkest part of the white to get it to the whitest white, and then everything that is lighter than that will be whiter. So that's what it was, that's what it is, and voila, that line in the back is gone. But we still have this bowing here. So a quick way to handle that is to go to the background layer, choose your marquee, and choose just a little bit more than you need. I'm choose a marquee, and now I'm using my right arrows just to get that edge, making sure I'm on the background layer, and I'm going to fill it with white. Command D. So now I have a nice straight edge, and I got rid of that bowing on the left. I think that looks pretty good so far. The next thing I'm going to do is to adjust the reflection. Although these reflections are nice, they are a little dark and they can be distracting. And sorry, I'm adjusting myself. And it's always best to have reflections that are light and not distracting from the product, and that also fade to transparency. So I'm going to add what's called a solid white layer, and you do that by it's a solid white color fill layer. You click here in the adjustments panel and choose solid color, and if you have white in your default colors, you can just click on that white and click OK. So what this did was fill this layer with white, and we don't want to fill the whole layer. We'd like to bring some of this back. So I'm going to do a gradient, G for gradient, make sure it's white to black, make sure I'm in my color fill layer and it's on, and I'm just going to drag down. And you see what happened here? It made a gradient, but the gradient went the wrong way. So you can always click X and drag again to drag the right way, or Command Z, you could have just dragged up instead. So either way, what needs to happen is that the gradient goes from the top to the bottom. The darker areas would be closest to the box. And you can drag as many times as you want until you think you got it right. And I like a nice soft gradient, and I think this looks good. The only other additional issue here is that this gradient looks longer than this one, so I might go and choose a brush B. That's a pretty big brush. I'll make it a little bit smaller, and I'll change the opacity to 10%. Just clicking on the 1 will make it to 10%. And I will I'll make sure that this is black, and I'll just bring a little bit of this reflection back, just so it will meet the standards of the reflection on the right. If I make a boo-boo, I can click X and I can kind of white it out on the bottom. And I can adjust it that one. So that's what it looks like in the mask. And I think this is a pretty snazzy picture at this point. I'm pretty happy with everything. At this point, if I had any other retouching that I had to do on the boxes, I probably would make a combined layer at the top by doing Command, Option, Shift, and E, and then I might do some retouching on that layer. I just want to double check here. I see a different coloration here, and when I turn the layers on and off, I see that over there. I just want to see if it's over here too. What I'm seeing here is some of the box popping out from this original layer in the back. Let me just see, because it's still here. So I think we have to address that, and there's an easy fix to that as well. I'm going to double click on the hand. I'm going to do another color fill layer of white, solid color white. I'm going to choose my white color again, click OK, and this time I'm going to choose a gradient again, and I'm going to make it really small to here. So what this did is it got rid of everything from the top, and if we hold down Shift, you can do it in a straight line. So now my line is nice and straight. So now you can see that the sides aren't popping out the way that they were before. You see, that's before the sides were kind of popping out, and that's after. And there might be a little bit popping out at the bottom because I stopped over here, so I'm double checking, and I don't see an issue. If I did, I would just go in this layer with my brush at 100% and add it to the sides if they were just popping out on the bottom of this part. But they're not, so we don't have to do that, and this looks great as well. And I might change this to sides, just to remind me that that's what I needed to make that color fill layer for, because see the sides were popping out? Good, now they're not. And like I said, this looks pretty good, but we can make one further adjustment. So if you look close, this is sharp. This was a great sharp exposure, but I'll show you a quick sharpening technique. Go to the top of the layer stack and do Command, Option, Shift, E. And I'd like you to name this layer Sharpening or Sharpen. Good. And I'm going to just, you know what, I'm going to zoom it in to 100% so that we can see how our sharpening is affecting our image. And whenever you're doing sharpening, you always want to have it at 100% so you can see exactly how it's affecting the image. And I'm going to choose Filter, Other, High Pass. And 10 is a little high, so I'm going to turn it down to about 7. And what I really want to do is just look at the edges and see that they're having some contrast added to them. And I'm going to click OK. And then when you look over here, you're going to see that it's still gray and you have a gray thumbnail. In order to make this, this technique work, you need to change the blending mode from normal to overlay. And voila. So let's see what it looks like off and on. So you thought it was sharp, but now it's super sharp. And if you feel that I went too far with it, you could always lower the opacity, or you could also try this. I'm going to put it back to 100%. You can try this high pass sharpening on soft light as well. So that's a little bit less of an effect. But I kind of like overlay, and I liked it around 83%. I'm going to leave it at that, and you can look around your image and see that it affected it very nicely. And voila, that concludes our tutorial of how to make an image that was shot on white have a crispy, clean white background. The final thing that you want to do, see our crop isn't perfect, but remember I said you might not want the same crop I want. So at this point, I'm just going to click Command S, and there it is saving. Just want to wait that out a little bit. Wait till it gets to 100, and then I can just close it, and we'll collapse Photoshop, and we'll bring Lightroom back, and you will see that we are here in Lightroom. I'm going to get out of this crop, escape. You will see, voila, that this file, it made you a nice TIFF here, an edit TIFF, and it imported it back to Lightroom for you. So you didn't have to do anything. If you work on a file in Lightroom and you export it and you save it, it will import back to Lightroom, and it will put it I just want to show you really quickly where my pictures are. So if I go into my Finder, and I gotta remember where my pictures are, in my FIT images, I have Tiana's folder. I made her a folder here. That's where all of the DNGs sit. So it put the TIFF that we just worked on right inside the folder with the DNGs. So if you followed my naming structure and you did everything the way that I said to do it, then you would know exactly where your worked on images would be, because they would be right with your original DNGs. Back to this over here. The final thing is that I do require an 8x10 for this project, and I would switch this to 8x10. And I would center it and click return. Beautiful. Complete project. And now you can do that for the other three. So you will be turning in 4 perfectly retouched files, digital images, and you will choose your favorite 5.6 and your favorite F22 to print out for me. I think that's it. There's one other little thing I didn't mention earlier on. If I had worked on this image in the beginning, this was the first image, and I had the second image that I wanted to work on, I would have synced the settings, and I would have checked all and synced, so that when I wanted to work on my other version of this one, that it would have all the settings of the first file. Let me just see what these two are doing here. N. So I started off with this image, and I want to sync it to that image. Sync settings, sync everything. There we go. And now you can see that they have exactly the same settings. And remember that these two had different exposures, so I would shut this one down because we already worked on that one, and perhaps I would have just made one additional slight exposure change downward to this one image before that's dramatic, before I exported it, so that it would match closely to the other image before I made all my changes to this one. So there you have it. This is the after, and this was the before. So that was the before image. Shift tab. There's your before. there's after. I certainly believe that this is portfolio quality. So have a creative week, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye for now.